In the previous video, we analyzed at a theoretical level two cases that required a different approach when executing the update method on a business component variable. In one case, the variable was in update mode, and in the other, the variable was in insert mode. We'll see examples of each. Here is a two-level transaction of office visits, with a key composed of the date of the visit, the physician and the shift, and as secondary data, the office, in addition to the last visit number given to a patient of the second level. Here's a representation, then, of the patients who will be seen in that visit. In addition to their identifier as the secondary attribute, we will have a number indicating the order in which the patient will be seen by the doctor, and whether the visit will be made via video conference or face-to-face. This transaction has a set of rules declared to govern its behavior, and has the business component property set. Here, at runtime, there's a single visit in Office 1 with these three patients. We'll want to change the office to 4, add a patient, 4, change the visit of patient 3 to by video, and set the same value to the new patient, 4. In addition, we'll want to delete patient 6, and we won't do anything to patient 1. Here's a web panel where we ask the user for the identifier of the office visit. And here's the new office, and then, in this variable, the patient to be added. Here, the one to be modified, and here the new value for by video for that patient, which will be the same as for the new one. And finally, here will be the patient to be deleted. Below we'll see the collection of messages obtained when trying to update via the BC. Let's implement a way to achieve this, the first one we analyzed in the previous video. Office visit is a BC variable of office visit precisely. We want to load it from the database with the values of the primary key to then update this property/attribute of the header, insert a new line through a BC variable of the BC data type of the lines, and we add it to the patient collection. Then we want to update another line, so we access it via getByKey method. And there we update the property/attribute we're interested in. We also want to delete a line, for which we use the removeByKey method of the collection, knowing that this deletion will be logical, and will only leave the item marked for deletion. Therefore, if at this moment we ask to see the internal content of the office visit variable in this way, and now we'll try it, the JSON should list this line marked with insert, this one with update, and this last one with delete. What about the others contained in the BC? They might not be marked at all, but, as we said, they will be in update mode by default. Let's try this for our example. For this visit, we want to change the office to 4, add patient 4, modify by video of patient 3, and delete patient 6. Patient 1 should remain as is. So here we enter the values of the primary key. The new office, 4, the new patient, 4. Also, we want to change by video of patient 3 and delete patient 6. Here we're looking at this JSON. Let's copy it to an editor to view its structure better. Here we can see the information of the header, and that Office ID has already been changed to 4. And if we look down to see the rest of the header info, we see the update mode and the inferred attributes, for example. Now let's look at the lines. The first line is that of patient 1, which was not changed. We see, for example, that by video is set to true. Anyway, we see that the mode is set to update. As we said, it's updated anyway with the same information it already had. Then we see patient 3, which is the one we wanted to change. It's in update mode, and with the new by video value true. Here we see the one that's now in the database before we actually run the update. Then we see patient 6, which is marked for deletion. And finally, number 4, which is marked as new. It has the by video property set to true as we indicated. This false value is due to a default rule in the transaction to enter all new patients with this value. This BC is like this in memory. We still haven't given the order to reflect these operations on the database. To do so, we run the update, and if it's successful, we commit. Then we ask again to see how the BC variable is now loaded, and also ask to display the messages in the message collection. We enter the same values and see that the update was successful. Now let's analyze the two JSONs, the ones before and after the update. Here's the previous one, which we've already analyzed. And here's the one after the update, where the office has effectively been changed. Patient 1 is exactly the same as it was. Patient 3, which we updated by setting it to true, and now we see that the value in the database, of course, matches the value in memory. Patient 4, which is new, is no longer labeled as insert, but as update, which is the default value. Also, with by video set to true. And patient 6 is no longer in the collection. It's been deleted. Now, if we check this in the transaction, we refresh, we'll have to see a 4 here. And indeed, patient 1 is as it was. 3 is now marked as by video. 4 has been added with a 0 for the number to be seen by the doctor. And 6 has been deleted. Now, let's try to achieve the same result, but without loading the variable from the database. Instead, we want to use the variable in insert mode. If we then replace the load by assigning directly to the primary key properties of its value, the office visit variable will be in insert mode, and before doing anything, empty. At this point, it will only have a value for the primary key. Here we add a value to this property, and last number will be empty. Then, we add a line as in the other case, adding the item to the collection. However, for the line we want to update, we should not run any getByKey because we do not have the office visit variable loaded in the database. Here what we must do is add an item to the collection. But we must be careful to request new memory space, specify for its identifier a value that we know exists, and only assign a value to the property we want to change, which is this one, and then add the item. Note that we only assign a value to the attribute that we want to change. We don't change the property corresponding to this other one because we want it to keep the value that it has in the database. Well, what about the line we want to delete? We can't do it with the variable in insert mode because even if we insert the item in the collection and then indicate that we want to delete it, this deletion will not be logical but physical. Indeed, this removeByKey will remove the item as if we had never inserted it. Let's see it in the JSON. We comment this and execute. I left the visit as it was before, with Office 1, Patient 1 by video, Patient 3 with false there, and Patient 6. Let's run with the same changes as before. and analyze the JSON. First, we can see that the header is in insert mode, as we expected. And only the non-empty values are loaded with the properties corresponding to the primary key, and the Office ID property to which we gave the new value. Then we see that only 2 lines are loaded in the business component. The one corresponding to the line to be inserted, which is in ints mode, number 4, with its values, and the line that we asked to modify, which is 3, is also in ints mode, because the header variable in ints mode cannot distinguish modes for the lines. This will be processed later, when the update method is executed. Only then will all the information from the database be loaded into an auxiliary variable, and we'll see if there's a record/item for this patient in order not to try to insert, but to update. What was that? Only the properties that have been changed, which in this case will have been only this one. It's absolutely clear that there's no news about the patient 6 we wanted to delete. That's because we cannot make the deletion when the variable is in insert mode. Therefore, let's delete all of this and leave this part for later. Let's delete this message we no longer need. Now we try to update, which, if successful, will perform the operations we've seen. In that case, we commit. Here, before making the commit, is when we have to delete the patient that we wanted to delete. This would be fine, but, as we warned in the previous video, there's a bug in GeneXus 17. As a result, when this office visit variable is in insert mode, after the update, it's not loaded with the values that it should, the current ones in the database. As a workaround, we'll make an explicit load. In short, here we made the update, after which this new line will have been inserted in the database. And this one will have been updated because this patient exists. Then we load from the database the variable with all that done, and then delete the patient that we wanted, and perform an update again on the variable so that it executes this deletion in a physical way. If it's successful, we can then commit. We're going to remove the comments from this and execute. Here we have the visit as we had it before. And now we're going to ask for all the updates, and we see that the visit was updated successfully. And if we now refresh, we see that indeed it did what we wanted, including the deletion of the line corresponding to patient 6. Of course, we could have achieved exactly the same if instead of manually loading the office visit variable in this way, we had done it with a data provider which returns an instance of office visit and loads in a simpler way the part of the header we're interested in, as well as the 2 lines, the one we want to insert and the one we want to update. As we said in the previous video, the data provider will always return its result in insert mode. So, office visit will be here, inevitably in that mode. Let's test it again to confirm that we get exactly the same result. Then, once again, we leave the visit as it was before, with Office 1 and these lines. We indicate the updates we want, and run again. Success. Here we showed examples of everything we saw at a theoretical level in the previous video. How the update works when the variable is in update mode, and how it works when it's in insert mode.